All right, so today we're diving into a pretty dark, pretty fascinating chapter in American history, and that is the Manson family murders.
Hmm.
And we're using, of course, Helter Skelter by Vincent
Mhm.
Bugliosi as our guide through this.
Oh, yeah.
Have you had a chance to read this one?
I have. It's pretty intense. I mean, it's more than just a true crime book, right? It's like, it's a front row seat to the whole investigation, the trial, and I think even more than that, it really puts it all into context, the culture of the time, everything. It's wild.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there when you say it puts it into context because it really does. And I think that's probably why this case is so fascinating to people, is because it's not just about the crimes themselves. It's about like what was happening in America at the time.
Totally. Yeah.
So before we even get into Charles Manson himself, let's kind of like paint a picture of what was going on, like the scene in 1969. We're talking, the summer of love, all that idealism sort of fading. Yeah. But that feeling of change, of rebellion, like that's still in the air.
Yeah.
And then these brutal murders.
Yeah.
Just shocking.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're talking about the Tate LaBianca murders, of course.
Right.
I mean, brutal, just shook the whole nation, right? The brutality, it seems so random. And then you have those cryptic messages written in blood. I mean, it was like a nightmare.
Yeah, and Bugliosi in the book, he does not hold back at all. I mean, he lays it all out, And you're at Sharon Tate's house, and she's pregnant. She's like this rising star. And she and four others are just brutally murdered. It's just, it's that feeling like something just snapped. Like whatever darkness was underneath the surface in the 60s, it just like erupted.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what makes this case, so compelling, I think. I mean, it wasn't just about the crimes, it was about what those crimes said about what was going on at the time. The Manson family, it's what they came to be known as. And they weren't these like career criminals, right? They were young people who were drawn in by Manson's charisma, this twist. I mean, he had a whole ideology.
Yeah, so this is where we get to Charles Manson,
Okay.
right? Like not your typical like criminal mastermind.
Yeah.
He's more like what? Like a cult leader. Like preying on like vulnerable people who are just trying to, find some meaning in their lives.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And he kind of understood like that feeling of rebellion
Right.
and rejecting norms. He like twisted it, this whole idea that people wanted something more. He took that and he made it into something dangerous, this whole ideology. He basically set himself up as like, this prophet. And that's where Helter Skelter comes in.
Right, not just the Beatles song anymore.
Exactly. I mean, he didn't just use the words. He like hijacked the energy of the song, right? It's all about chaos and revolution.
Right.
He twisted that into his whole apocalyptic vision. And he predicted this race war, Helter Skelter. And he actually convinced his followers that these murders, they were going to be like the spark to set it off.
God, it's just, it's a chilling example of how easily someone can just manipulate meaning to fit their own agenda. I mean, it's scary.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's scary for sure. And I think it shows how important like critical thinking is, questioning what you hear, especially when someone's like, I have all the answers, You really got to be careful.
Yeah, for sure. So how did they actually crack the case? I mean, Manson, he was careful. He wasn't like at the actual murders.
That's where you really see Bugliosi shine, right? I mean, he was so meticulous, like connecting these little details, witness statements, the weird messages at the crime scene. He put the whole puzzle together,
Right.
to show that Manson wasn't just involved, but he was controlling these people.
God, the trial itself must have been a total circus, right? Like those pictures of Manson with the X carved on his forehead, the followers just mimicking him.
Oh, yeah, complete media frenzy. It was a clash of cultures, this huge legal battle all playing out while the whole nation was kind of struggling with like its own ideals falling apart. It was a lot. And Bugliosi had to navigate all of that.
Right.
He had to prove not just that they did it, that they physically committed murder, but that they were manipulated into doing it.
And that's something that's so powerful about this case, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about the murders. It's about how people can be manipulated, especially in like a group.
Yeah, like a cult. It was a huge warning,
Yeah.
about how dangerous those dynamics can be. It really made people look at, the whole idea of belonging and putting all your faith in one leader.
Right.
And you know what? These are things that are still relevant today, even if you're not talking about an actual cult.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've covered the crimes themselves, how awful they were,
Yeah.
the whole messed up logic behind them, the culture at the time, the trial, and why people are still so fascinated by this case.
Yeah, and it all comes from this one book, which really makes you think, right? could something like this happen again? Like, what are the red flags? How do you spot manipulation before it's too late? It's scary, but it's something you got to think about,
Yeah, definitely something to think about.
especially these days.
All right. Well, on that note,
Yeah.
we'll wrap it up.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
See ya.
Until next time.